Hello, welcome to Art 102, Week 9. It is August 21st, 2023. I will share screen. All right, so oops. So today's topic is AI and art. All right, so this is a topic that didn't exist a year ago, and I've actually gave this lecture twice already. But this hopefully this may not be super relevant in the future, but I think it's interesting to share for now since it's still part of the zeitgeist. All right, so first of all, what is AI in general? So AI stands for artificial intelligence, of course. So basically, computers making decisions that are based on human coding. So everything that an AI does, such as translating words in Google Translate, for example, um, those exist only because humans can program them, and they're based upon programming and not biology. So AI is artificial because, again, humans are creating them themselves, right? And this also refers to, as it says right here, um, they're not, it's humans and non-human animals, they don't count as AI, they're just regularly intelligent. Okay, and that doesn't mean smart, it just means intelligent, which is a whole nother philosophical slash neurobiological realm that we're not going to go into. So the kind of stuff that AI is used for is a lot more broad than you might think. So it's pretty much used for everything. So Google search is the big one. Um, you type in words, and then the computer finds stuff for you based on what words you put in, probability and statistics. Same thing with like Amazon and stuff. They help find you things. The recommendation system comes from this using keywords and such, which probably makes sense to most of us. Like, oh, okay, we see this ad for balloons. It's because I was looking at a balloon earlier. That makes sense. But AI is in everything, pretty much. Anything in your phone uses AI. I use a lot of speech to text, and that's interpreting sound waves that we create, and turning them into words. And based on how clear you speak, or the programming of the the program, that determines how accurate it can be. Okay, so again, you got to remember that all of this is created by humans. It has nothing to do with actual intelligence, as far as what living beings can have. It's only bound by the limits of what humans can program into these machines. Okay, so again, there's no intelligence here, actual intelligence. There's not going to be any Terminator kind of stuff happening. It's that only happen if humans give it the power to do that. Which, which I guess I shouldn't put past humans. So, in regards to the artists and art in general, we're gonna narrow our focus quite a bit more. So, I'm specifically for this lecture going to be talking about AI generated art. Okay, so these are usually done the the way I'm going to do it is just talk about the text to image models pretty much. We're going to ignore music generators, for example, um, or Chat GPT, because those are whole different fields with their own implications and things going on with that. Way too deep for this conversation. So pretty much the way that the programs I'm talking about is a prompt process. So what we have here is sort of an oversimplification of how this works. So um, this data set is what the company or program has. They have a pool of images, and we're going to talk a little bit. I'm going to briefly mention Lion, Laion, and several slides from now, who basically have more than 5 billion images in this pool of information. So they have this pool of 5 billion images, right? Um, we have this AI generative model where basically this is making the images where things are being put together. So the artist role here is the pre-curation is we want to think about what images we're going to make, whatever. We're sorting through different words and such, and say like again, red balloon. Um, so this will like point to all the red balloon images, and then this AI generative model, what's happening is a series of really complicated statistics, math stuff going on, stuff I'll never be able to understand. 99.999% of the people on Earth won't be able to understand, but it's basically statistics. And what this artist role tweaking here is like, okay, I didn't like this. Maybe I should put red balloon against a green sky, for example, or in the trees. So then you play around with this model by typing things in, and it'll come out with an image for you, right? And so we'll have this generated images, and then we'll curate which ones we like better, and the AI artwork comes out. So basically, you type in some words of something you want to see. The AI model creates these things, and you pick and tweak these images until you like them. So a little bit more in depth is basically the 5 billion images are tagged somehow, and these images are created again by probability, like what is the next pixel over going to be like, and based on the probability, like that will change it to like here's another red pixel, oh here's another red pixel, um or maybe change it to a blue pixel if it's at the edge of something. So it's just a lot of probability statistics. So I want to put my position on this presentation before we go any further about AI and artwork, because I am an artist after all. So I'm doing my best to remain as neutral as possible on this. It's easy to give a very biased perspective. Um, I don't personally plan on taking advantage of generative AI unless I have a strong reason to do so. I haven't done it so far. I don't foresee myself needing to do it. Um, Nothing against other people who do it. It's just I don't find a use for it. I'm also very skeptical of new technology in general. Like this is old technology, but it's very refined and very accessible. And when something's hot, I kind of just let it go and see what happens and observe it and let it cool down, because I'm not interested in things that are trendy. I'm not trying to do it. I like pushing my boundaries, but I don't like doing things I wouldn't do otherwise. So I'm gonna wait this one out to see if I want to engage with this. I'm still leaning towards not really interested. There are things to the right that I enjoy, which is fake metal album covers, basically. I think it's really funny. I think this can be really entertaining stuff. Seeing some of the prompts are really funny, and for me, it can provide a lot of entertainment value, for sure. So again, I'm an artist, so I do have a bias towards the interest of artists as opposed to the business people. I mean, honestly, like you can't be completely neutral about this sort of thing. And so I am going to lean towards, well, I'm an artist. I love other artists. So I'm like, I will lean that way naturally. All right. And so again, I'm far from an expert. I've done a lot of research, a lot of research. It's kind of mind melting, but I still feel like I don't know a whole lot. And a lot of the research I did was back in the winter term. I've updated things here and there, but landscapes probably changed quite significantly since then. So here's a link to a pro AI article, and I'll go through some of the points. So some of the good things is that it's great for non-artists to make something they dreamed of. Again, it's accessible. It's a really nice way for people to realize their visions, such as like scenes from a dream that they had, and do that without struggling to make it happen. Right. I mean, you will struggle to find the correct prompt, the correct combination of words that will get an image that you like. But again, it's this really nice way of letting people who can't draw or Photoshop or whatever really create or really generate images that are close to their imagination. Unexpected results. So yeah, that's in the fact that humans are can be kind of limited in the sense of even the most creative people can sort of get stuck on the single track where they're only thinking about things one way, and then this can produce a monkey wrench that really changes what you're thinking of and really make you reconsider, oh, I didn't expect to see something from that angle, so. And that's, I mean, basically, it's the argument of diversity where if you do things the same way over and over again, it gets boring. But if you have some diverse voices um, who can add their experience in, then that can create something better, something more beautiful, more inclusive, more loving, et cetera, et cetera. So, in a way, it can sort of generate that sort of different perspective. It's only good once you learn how to use the system. So if you put in basic keywords, you're not going to get a good image. Basically, you've really got to learn the correct keywords to put in order to make something that you really like, more or less. Probably going to be in more places where there was nothing before. So this is an argument where it's like, it's not going to replace artists. It's going to add more images everywhere that artists wouldn't have filled anyways, like a random editorial that wouldn't have an image. Someone can just put something there now. And this next point, human artists very likely won't be replaced. Um, Almost a year after reading this article ish, or half a year at least, um, this is partially true, partially not true. Um, it's predicting the future, which I always think is kind of slimy to say like this won't happen or this very likely won't happen. It's better to just say I don't know. There's a prompt book and sites to help you with your prompts. Um, this is kind of a jerk thing to say, in my opinion. If you're a small artist, your influence is too small. If you're a well-known artist, your inspiration is in others' work already. So basically, it's saying the artwork is, so the AI model takes all sorts of images without consent, and if you're a well-known artist like Monet and you have like thousands or millions of images on the internet, you're more likely like you're more likely to influence other people than whether you're a small artist. So if you're a small artist, your images might not get used in the data set, so don't really worry about it. Which again is kind of a jerk thing to say. We don't expect artists to credit everyone they were inspired by for their artwork. Fair point, but we'll talk about inspiration in a different sense later. It will probably revolutionize 3D as well. Um, that could be a good thing, bad thing, push people out of jobs, introduce more jobs, who knows? There's medical uses, things for coding as well, engineering jobs that will be really useful. Um, so yeah, there's some benefits, and AI creativity is on par with everyday non-earth-shaking creativity. This is a really jerk point where he's basically saying like, if you're not a genius, then like, who cares? So yeah, I hate this article. It's very condescending towards artists. Um, as you can see, I'm very, very biased. So why is this a problem? So there's a lot of problems here, obviously. As I mentioned before, I think there's a lot of positives about it, like the whole here's something I never would have thought of. This can help non-artists make good stuff, et cetera, et cetera. So when we bring in late stage capitalism to this, um, which is what we live in now. Basically, a lot of late stage capitalism and art is driven by money, profit, less so about genuine interest in the arts. If you not if when you watch that Adam Ruins Everything video from last week or 2 weeks ago, you'll understand what I mean by that. Um, so yeah, so basically what this is saying is sure, like some AI artists may float to the top, but probably only if they're backed by money, by corporations who are hiring them and pushing out the marginalized people who are doing their own thing that isn't super sanitized for everyone. Um, but yeah, and AI tech will likely replace lower and medium income jobs, not higher class ones. That I would say I would mostly agree with that, but there are some like coding jobs that might be replaced. So let's talk about tool versus replacement. So AI as a tool is a means to an end, whereas AI as a replacement is getting rid of the middleman. So so this example of robots, right? Robots replacing people. So the Roomba on top is a tool. So it's not sure like you're getting rid of the person pushing around the vacuum, but that's not really a loss of a job. It's like, okay, here's a tool to help me get stuff done. You have to tell it, you have to program it when to do it or whatever. I don't know how they work. But a human's there to do the job. It can't function without the human. You can't just like plop a Roomba down and let it go. You have to like program it or plug into a wall or something like that, whatever. Whereas on the assembly line for cars, like human workers are fully replaced by robots, right? So those jobs are gone. Um, I'm not saying whether that's good or bad. Probably bad in some ways that workers lose jobs, but good as far as maybe there's less accidents, and maybe those people who would work there are working at a better job elsewhere. Who knows? But those are some big differences between how AI can be used. Like, are we using it to like supplement our imagination, or are we using it to not hire artists anymore? So there's different ways to think about AI. So here's the easiest example. I just watched a few videos to jog my memory. Photography is the easiest example. So, so once photography was invented, pretty much 1839-ish, uh, painting didn't become obsolete. Drawing didn't become obsolete, right? So a lot of people did think, oh, it's the end of painting. Like everyone can do it, so nothing matters anymore. That didn't turn out to be true, as you're aware, as people still value Van Gogh's work, right? Even though it's not photorealistic. Um, we value different things than we did before. Like maybe more people did value photorealistic paintings like mid early to mid 1800s, right? Yeah, it was a thing. And then after photography, like, oh gosh, like this is going to replace all the painters. Well, maybe it opened up painters to do something else, instead of just doing something photorealistically, right? Same thing with the Kodak Brownie camera, which was the first consumer grade portable camera with 100 exposures. Um, that didn't put all the professional photographers out of business. It just made photography more accessible to everyone else. And skipping much further ahead, cell phones. Well, I was a photography major, and I was like, these cell phones, these iPhones, everyone's gonna use this, and no one's gonna care about what I do. But again, that's not completely true. I will say that people have gotten better at photography since um, taking images has been a huge part of everyone's lives for at least a decade, right? Probably more like a decade and a half. Um, and so everyone's getting better at photography. So that makes photographers have to like pretty much differentiate themselves a lot more. But there's still a big difference when you see someone who's using proper studio lighting than there is just doing a selfie in your room, right? So it's not obsolete. It's things just kind of change. Like maybe Photoshopper is the big thing, right? Is a much bigger thing than it was like 20 years ago. So things kind of change, and media doesn't necessarily become obsolete. I mean, cassettes, sure. 8 track, sure, but they're replaced by things that are better, and people were able to adapt to it. So there's always the argument of AI is inspired just like humans. Well, that's completely false. So humans are inspired by humans. When that happens, there's this process that goes on in the brain of like figuring out um, what is the style of this, blah blah blah. Does the AI do that to an extent? Yeah. But it only takes from existing sources that it's basically combining things that exist. It can't make anything truly new. So what we're doing as humans when we copy up something from the masters is there's a lot of human elements of it, as using a brush. It's we we can't use the same exact or it's nearly impossible to do the same exact strokes as a master painter, right? Whereas AI, it's pixel per pixel, it's math, it's probability, it's algorithms. So it's just putting dots based on probability. And that's a very cold and mechanical way of doing things. And with humans, we have this medium of our brain, which has a lot of which can't do things exact. We have things such as perception differences, like this guy painting the same exact Monet thing. Um, the light might have been different, and the maybe the print that he was copying from faded a little. Uh, Things like that, and maybe not the same exact green, whereas computers, they can be the same exact color. So there's a lot of things when translating from being inspired by things that's processed by the human brain and the human body, that humans can't do things exactly the same way twice. There's the time takes a toll on things, stuff like that. um, Even though the differences might be minute, they still exist. Okay, so another thing too is like plagiarism is bad for everyone. And the difference is humans know what plagiarism is, and AI doesn't care because it doesn't have feelings. It's not a living sentient thing. So um, that's a whole different thing, right? Um, so yeah, I guess there's more into this other point. Okay. So yeah, so plagiarism. So again, the way this works is that Lion, which is a nonprofit, scrapes the web for images, meaning it basically steals images from everywhere. Over 5 billion images last time I checked. And that is perfectly legal because it's a nonprofit and they're taken for research. However, um, a lot of for-profit companies do use these sets of images. So what they're doing is data laundering, right? And it's technically illegal. It's a loophole. It's not right, but that's what's happening. And law, international law, United States law, any kind of law moves way too slow to deal with this effectively. So although things are kind of tightening up a little bit, there was an article yesterday. I forgot. No, I think I might have put in um, where AI art is public domain. It can't be copyrighted, right? So that just happened like months and months after all this stuff was going off. It took so long to get that into legislator, right? So this is a sort of a way to explain the whole inspiration thing. Influences someone with a butt looks at it, you think about things, you process things, and then you make something, and then the artist makes this thing themselves. This is kind of how AI art works. All this stolen art is being digested, it's mixed around in the tummy, and it's shit out, basically. Sometimes the shit looks beautiful, right? But it is like combined in the tummy, like together. Whereas like the actual digital images are in the person, whereas with the human made art, it only exists in the brain, right? You don't hold the actual image there. You don't physically combine them. So it's a whole separate, different process. Again, mathematical versus meat space. And I found these metaphors a lot more helpful. Is that you're not really making this isn't your artwork necessarily. You're basically treating the AI generator as um you're the client and they're the artist, right? So think about it in this term in Google search. When you type in 3D illustration of cute robot bird, you did this, you typed it in, but this is not your work. And this says this is your work and this is not your work. Um, and I find that a little bit contentious, but I also think I do kind of agree with that because it's you're typing stuff in, but you're not necessarily moving the pixels around to do it. It's this machine that's doing it for you, right? It's sort of like photography where you're not actually recording the pixels one by one. You press this button to make the machine do that for you. Um, so, but we still think of that as art, right? And some people still think of this as art, and that's kind of valid. Um, but uh, but the problem with that is all these images are taken from other sources that other people made. Um, Many of them, there is a bias towards really good popular artists. Many of them put hundreds of hours of work into this to of these images that constitute this output. Um, Whereas like when you're doing it as a person, like you have to put in the work to make these images good. Whereas this just again shits it out, right? Just combinations of things. So yeah, technically it is artwork in that sense, but it's built off other people's artwork that they worked really hard to make, right? And you spend like 5 seconds doing it. Um, so so another way of looking at it is like producers or curators where produce like a curator, for example, they gather the artwork for a show. They might have the foresight to be like, okay, I need this artist and this artist and this artist to make, and then they make an amazing show and it's the best show ever, right? So is it the artist's work or the curator's work? Well, it's both, right? But the curator, it's in this sense you're the curator, right? You don't want to take all the you can't take all the credit because without the art that existed before it wouldn't exist. You're just the one who brought it together, right? So when you're doing this, it's makes more sense to think of yourself as a curator or a producer or a client rather than an artist. Because I'd argue it's not necessarily art, it's algorithms, it's math, it's probabilities. And yeah, that can make beautiful art, but again, it's built off the hard work of hundreds, thousands of people, right, that don't get credited. So okay, there's that argument. What if artists don't get replaced by AI generated art? Is there a downside to that? Of course there is. So this tweet is basically like the value of art might go down because people think, well, I'd rather do something cheaper that I can make instead of hiring a professional artist. I want to save money, you know. And so when that happens, and a lot of people think that that'll make artists need to compete with the prices, which drives the value down, which makes people value artists a lot less, which is obviously a huge problem. This is another huge problem is that sometimes if you put an artist's name into their artwork, such as Salvador Dali, sometimes like there's some artists where their name was put in, some popular living artists, and there's more AI generated images that pop up on Google than their own images, which really sucks. Again, that undermines their work quite a bit. Some work is taken illegally, including private medical record photos. That really did happen. And I would say most is taken illegally. It will require artists to do something different slash better, which is a positive in one sense, but also forcing artists to change themselves in order to fit the paradigm is kind of nasty in the sense that artists are already under a lot of pressure to impress people all the time. Artists are expected to get better all the time. And yeah, we do get better all the time. But why isn't that really demanded so much of other fields? Like why aren't accountants like put to the same scrutiny? Right. Why is there always have to be like super big innovation all the time? I don't know. And sea of shit. So too much shit to choose from. Curation is necessary. Why do I need to buy from real artists if I can get another good one for free? So this tweet basically says this tweet and this video are basically saying the same thing, which is like, again, like people will think of art as less valuable because they can make it. So they'll think of other artists as less valuable. But if you have, this is a good example. If an editor, portfolio reviewer, or school admissions officer gets 100 portfolios and 95 are digital smears, digital AI art, in some way this problem will fix itself. But at the same time, you're getting flooded with a sea of crap. Like the more time when I started social media, there's small cameras or the camera phones were low quality, but they took a lot of room, so you couldn't take a lot of photos. Now you could take thousands of photos, store them on the iCloud, and so there's a lot more crap to go to look at when you're looking through your photos. Now imagine everyone, all the artists you know, times 1,000, trying to make trying to sell like all 50 of their images. You're gonna have to go through a sea of crap in order to find really good stuff, right? So yeah, this is a problem with like there's just too much going on. It's inflation essentially, or is that deflation? I think it's inflation. Um, but yeah, the value just goes down horribly, and art is seen as less valuable, which is really sad. So Ted Chiang on AI and labor, he wrote the script. Sorry, he wrote the short story that was adapted into the film Arrival, which is amazing. He talks a lot about how a lot of artists aren't necessarily like anti-technology. It's more like we want to keep humanness in this. So the parallel he brought was the Luddites who weren't anti-technology. They killed machines because like it's really making things a lot soulless, like using factory technology instead of handmade technology. They're like, we want to keep humanity in this. We don't want it to be automated and soulless. So, and he makes a bunch of other great points. So that time an AI piece won first place in an art contest. So the category for this was digital art slash digitally manipulated photography. Okay, so from the beginning we know that okay, like this is something where we don't expect things to be totally realistic, um, and things can be photoshopped. Okay, so Midjourney is noted on the label, which I believe is right here via Midjourney. Okay, and the judges didn't know at first, but they said they still awarded first place regardless. So, regardless of whether this was made by AI or not, the judges thought this was the best piece, period. Okay, so the artist, Jason Allen, he said um, he generated over 100 images. He picked the best one. He used a lot of Photoshop on it to tweak what he wanted, and they did some upscaling with AI to make it larger, better resolution, etc., etc. Okay. And he says he wants to do even more after all the backlash. And he said, "This isn't going to stop. Art is dead, dude. It's over. AI won. Humans lost." Which is a awful thing to say, right? Um, so that's again an artist who is devaluing other artists, saying they're not as valuable as what AI can do, right? So take a minute to yourself to think about what that means, and again what the implications of that are, right? So not not looking great for artists, right? When I did this lecture, this this came out. Everyone wonder what the rest of the Mona Lisa looks like. So Adobe Firefly is a way to get generate images based on an existing piece of another existing image or whatever. I said that very confusing. And this is what happened. And the replies in quote retweets are great, saying like what the rest of the Mona Lisa looks like. This is all it was meant to be, and just like taking down like you're trying to make this very well loved artwork and change it, and you think it's better than the original. That's sort of what's being implied by this tweet. So yeah, that didn't turn out very well for them, but um my friend who works at Adobe is in love with this kind of stuff and uses it all the time. So I did have this note that says Adobe does only take images from their stock photos and artwork as a data set, but I checked again in time for this lecture, and well, they're stealing from other artists who haven't given consent, such as Craig Mullins or Ralph McQuarrie or whatever. So yeah, Adobe sucks as well, because I was like, finally Adobe does something good and ethical, but not anymore. So again, remember that this is stealing from artists, right? So a bad use about AI is propaganda. Obviously, we've used it. This is a good example of trying to say like, oh, the protesters were hugging the cops, but they have 6 fingers. Yikes. Um, there's Mind the name. The new Danny Brown JPEG Mafia album is called Scaring the Hose. This is obviously AI generated imagery. Oh, this is some of the album artwork for it. Like, you know, so and there's a lot of Trump skateboarding, or there was one Trump skateboarding. Um, like this one, like this looks realistic. Did it really happen? So of course there's very many crazy uses that could happen. Um, and of course this is going to happen because there's a lot of bad actors out there who want to lie in order to get their point across, whether it's correct or not. Whether it's even if it's for a good cause, um, it that may be harmful too. Physiognomy. So this is a way of categorizing people to see if they're like grouping people in order to make stereotypes out of them, or stereotyping people to figure out are they good people or bad people. There's another word for it as well, like that I can't remember. But you can see how this is a problem. If you don't, then maybe you should talk to some brown people. um and then there's people like this who are like, who cares about the artist's feelings? It's like, if AI can do it, that's better. Artists need to do a better job, or like they just have to get used to it, or they need to start using AI, right? Again, this is really frustrating as an artist, because again, it's devaluing what artists do. I don't think I have to really explain this to people, but art is extremely valuable to humans, and this is devaluing the impact that artists have, and artistic people and art has on humans in general. So just going towards like the machine side, people with money, their side, um, very problematic in so many aspects. And the problem with this is that designers face this all the time already, even without the AI. Um, people think, oh, like people think they can design things better, just even without experience, even without a degree. It's sort of like doctors saying like, or telling you, of course some doctors are wrong sometimes, but it's like saying you're an expert over a doctor, and even though they have training, again, sometimes they're wrong, but most of the time they know what they're talking about because they were in school for a really, really, really long time. And when when doctors are wrong, when a person's like, okay, actually this design is better, that's one outstanding example out of a sea of thousands, basically. So and those kind of stick out in our mind because of confirmation bias. So we can't really rely on those anecdotes because, again, it's confirmation bias. Just because one extraordinary thing apply exists doesn't mean it applies to everything. So yeah, that again, this ties back into the whole devaluation of artists. Like, oh, I can make it, like, I've seen this artist do, or this person make great artwork, AI artwork, but like not everyone can do that, right? So um yeah, okay, let's move on to this next topic. So why should non-AI artists care? So yeah, of course you can ignore all you want, but will it make artists obsolete? That's very hot right now. That might affect jobs in the future. That might affect how you perceive things, right? If everything's just AI. You can also use it in your workflow if you want, and use it to summon your dreams. But also remember that there's copyright issues that are going on that are pretty scary. Um, well, not okay. Again, can't remember if I put it here. No, I guess I didn't yet. But I'm gonna have to post this in the slideshow. But basically, yeah, AI is considered to be AI art generated art is considered to be public domain. It's not copyrightable, which is really good for artists because it means like anyone can use it for any reason. And it which means, which I wouldn't say it doesn't mean it doesn't have value. It can't have monetary value legally. So that's a good step in respecting the artist, which should happen anyways. So is ethical generative AI possible? Absolutely, 100%. So the music industry is really good with this because music industry is built with a lot of lawyers wanting to sue the pants off other people. So the reason it works there is because there's a lot of money there and there's a lot of legal scares there. So Danny Brown's album from several years ago, oh gosh, I forgot the name, but he went into debt making this album because there's so many samples, which sucks as an artist. Um, and there's a lot of cultural relevancy with these samples, and he couldn't have made the album without these samples, right? So yeah, you could say, well, do something else, but taking away that ability to remix and resample things in a creative way, to progress commentary, to progress what music means, like stripping that away sucks, basically, because people are greedy. There's also the ability to use Creative Commons for your artwork. Like, yeah, I do want people to be able to use this in other senses, to be remixed. Like, as long as you um, credit me, do whatever you want with it. Even sell it off. Even if you, as long as you credit me or whatever. There's different types of Creative Commons. Again, opting in for training, commissioning artists to make things with AI, and in-house creators, basically what I thought Adobe was doing, where their image data set is created by people that they hired to make this image data set for. That's another way to do it. So Holly Herndon has been working with AI for a long time, for over a decade, and she has basically a Vocaloid thing where You can make her sing in her voice whatever you want it to. You have to purchase it, and yeah, it's an interesting avenue to explore. And I think that this cover image was uh, created with AI, which is why it's like that. Um, so this next page refers to Chat GPT in general, not necessarily generative AI, but it's something I want to bring up anyways. Is that the problem? Like, there's a couple of problems that of like the legality of it, right? How is this affecting workers? How is this displacing workers? So the thing about technology is the phrase move fast, break things. That happens a lot in technology, what the tech bros do, what Silicon Valley does. But they do that in spite of what's good for human beings, in pursuit of new, in pursuit of profit, in pursuit of impressing people, yada yada yada. So unfortunately, workers' rights don't exist aren't considered as important as growing technology. And you can include the environment on that as well. Like, we're not always thinking about what's going to be sustainable, right? So there's that aspect of it. But the thing is, to just because something's coherent doesn't mean it it's understood or it's trustworthy. So again, there's no actual thought in it. AI is not This kind of AI is not sentient. It's algorithms, it's probability. So you don't have to worry about it taking over. All you really have to worry about is a flood of bad information going out there, which is a huge problem. But there's a lot of that out there. It's might only get worse. So when it comes to AI art, it's mostly just non-human artists. It's mostly businessmen who are making this suck. Because AI art could be a huge supplement to humanity. It could be amazing, but it sucks a little bit. The reason it sucks at all is because of greed, basically. It's businessmen who want to cut corners, who don't want to hire an illustrator, who just like, let's get rid of this part because it's not helpful, even though like art really does help. It really does stimulate the brain, helps you get into things. Think about how many albums or books you looked at the album cover or the book cover and you're like, oh, I want to read that just because of that. When there's a little bit more human soul behind that, um, you'll probably notice. Again, move fast, break things isn't always a good way to do it. There's also people who don't understand or appreciate art in the process, who kind of make this kind of shitty, where again, they don't care about artists themselves, they just care about the end product. They don't care if it has like soul in it. So that kind of sucks. And artists who are like just like whatever and don't care are part of the problem too. I like this comic strip. Just go ahead and read it real quick. So yeah, it's important for artists to support artists, even though like they're like in this comic, they're exchanging $5 back and forth. Um, yeah, like it's good to support other people and not be competitive, just to raise each other up. And artists should be on the side of artists, not AI. And artists should work on make not not killing AI, but shaping it to be more ethical and fighting for that. And if your art gets stolen, you should fight that, not just let it happen. I like this meme, this trade offer. Just go ahead and read that yourself. Here's an interesting challenge of an artist versus DALL-E, which is a AI generative model. How they respond to prompts, and then there's other people in the same studio try to guess which is AI and which is a human doing it. Very interesting video. Here's this website, have I been trained, to see if your data has been used uh in Lion. And this is my prompt and this is what came out, and obviously not, but it was good to check. If you're an artist, here's how to do watermarks. Really nice thread if you're bummed. This is hand painted, by the way, digitally. So yeah, just remember that like we're in this together. We're not artists, I should say. Like we can't really say anything doomy right now. We have to just sort of wait it out, speak up for ourselves, and fight for our rights. Here's a good comic about this as well. And the rest is information where I took the slide. The rest of the videos are the slides, or is where I took information from for the slides. So I'm properly citing my work. I love Linus Bowman. So basically, at the point we're at now, I think a lot of the AI hype has died down quite a bit. Um, I don't see it being posted or talked about a lot on Twitter much anymore. And so a lot of at the beginning of this, part of the problem was like everyone thought art was safe from machines, right? But when this came out, like it's not, you know, we're gonna lose our jobs, and some people did lose their jobs. Uh, I I don't know if I linked it in the slideshow or not about that. Uh, but yeah, some people have lost their jobs, and some people's jobs have shifted. Some people's works are seen as less valuable, or they had to lower their prices. I follow a lot of digital artists, like probably 200 or so on Twitter. So I see these things, and yeah, a lot of that kind of talk has sort of died down recently. Since the last time I taught this, which was like 3 months ago. Um, so AI people are able to sort of spot when something's AI generated more easily than at the beginning of this, right? Which is natural. So I have hope that AI art will be used better in the sense people will care more about human made art. I'm not going to use AI generated artwork for anything as far as I can tell. So I'm pretty optimistic, and I never felt like this was the end for me or anything. So, but however, I am always going to be skeptical of it. I'm always going to keep my eye on it. I'm not going to let it just do whatever it's going to do. I'm always going to fight for rights, and um not just lay down and let things happen. And a lot of artists, a lot of people have been doing a great job at that. Again, AAR is considered public domain. Um, let's go to Corey Doctor. Oh, jeez. Never mind. So anyways, yeah. So I am pretty optimistic about the future. Like artists are going to be fine. Um, AI is not as good as people thought it was until like fingers can be done well, until people can really hammer things down very, very, very well. Um, I think things are gonna be okay, but it's never good to settle and always take care of yourself. So, um, yeah, so that's my lecture on AI. I hope it was useful. I hope this isn't really relevant in the near future, but maybe it's enjoyable. Maybe you learn some things. Um, Maybe you're more skeptical about AI now as well. So, yeah, take care. Toodles.